In 1500 AD, a single city in central Mexico received 20,000 tons of one grain every year as tribute from conquered territories. That grain covered more than 200,000 acres of cultivated land. It fed 20 million people. It provided complete protein, every essential amino acid the human body requires from a single seed that grew in drought, in poor soil, and without a single purchased input. By 1970, that same grain survived on fewer than 1,000 acres globally. Entire varieties had gone extinct. The farmers who once grew it across 2 continents had been dead for generations. The knowledge of how to cultivate it at scale had not been passed down, because passing it down had once been punishable by death. The grain did not fail. It was not replaced by something better. It was targeted, systematically, by name, with a death penalty attached. This is amaranth. For over 3,000 years, it was the grain that provided what no European crop could match: complete protein, drought resistance, and nutritional density that modern science has only recently fully documented. The grain the Spanish Empire spent 200 years trying to erase from the earth. The Chinampas of Tenochtitlan, approximately 1480 AD. 40 years before Cortés arrives. The floating gardens extend across the shallow lake in long, narrow rectangles of built-up soil. The water between them reflects the early morning sky the way water reflects sky when it has been managed for generations: clear, deliberate, alive. She is harvesting amaranth seeds before the heat comes. The seed heads are dense and heavy, deep burgundy and gold, nodding slightly in the morning air. She strips them into a clay vessel with practiced hands, no tool required, just the motion her mother taught her and her mother's mother before that. She will grind some of these seeds into flour before midday. She will boil the leaves as greens tonight. She will save the best seeds for next season, the largest, the most vigorous, the ones from plants that withstood the dry weeks in late summer. She has been selecting this way since she was old enough to tell a strong plant from a weak one. Her selection is the result of 3,000 years of accumulated agricultural intelligence passed through hands, not books. The smell of amaranth seed heads drying in morning sun reaches her before she even looks at the vessel filling in her hands, dusty, faintly sweet, mineral. The smell of grain that has already absorbed everything the soil and the season had to offer. She is simply harvesting what her family needs from what the land provides, without asking permission from anyone. The scale of Aztec amaranth cultivation at its peak is documented in Spanish colonial records, the same records created by the people who subsequently banned it. By 1500 AD, the Aztec Empire cultivated over 200,000 acres of amaranth, more land than was dedicated to beans. Tenochtitlan received over 20,000 tons of amaranth seed annually as tribute from conquered territories. Every household, from farmers to nobility, consumed it daily. They popped the seeds like popcorn. They ground them into flour for flatbreads. They boiled the leaves as greens throughout the growing season. The most significant preparation was tzoali. Amaranth seeds were toasted and ground, mixed with honey or maguey syrup and formed into dough. During religious ceremonies, priests shaped this dough into figures of the gods: Huitzilopochtli, the war god; Tlaloc, the rain god. These figures were paraded through the city, worshipped, then broken apart and distributed to the people to eat. This was not symbolic, it was communion, the physical body of the divine made edible and shared. The Spanish friar Bernardino de Sahagún documented all of this in systematic detail in the Florentine Codex, completed around 1600. He recorded that the indigenous people called amaranth the seed of immortality. He recorded exactly why, and he recorded what happened when Spain decided that had to stop. In 1519, Hernán Cortés arrives in Tenochtitlan with 400 soldiers. Within 2 years, he has toppled an empire of 20 million people through smallpox, superior weaponry, and strategic alliances with rival tribes. The military conquest took less time than a single planting season. Holding the territory required something more. The Spanish recognized immediately that they could not govern a population whose every meal reinforced indigenous identity. Every family that ground amaranth seeds for tzoali was performing an act of worship to gods that the Catholic doctrine classified as demonic. Every field of amaranth was a field of resistance. The Catholic Church, embedded with the conquistadors, issued its decree. Amaranth cultivation was banned. Not discouraged, not taxed, banned. The penalty for growing it was death. Fields were burned, seed stores were destroyed. Anyone caught processing amaranth faced execution. The reasoning was explicit and documented. As long as amaranth existed, the old religion existed. The grain and the faith were inseparable. Destroying one required destroying the other. Spain replaced amaranth with wheat imported from Europe. Indigenous farmers were forced under the encomienda system to cultivate European grains that required different techniques, different climates, and delivered inferior nutrition, but carried no connection to the banned religion. Wheat fed the body without feeding the soul the Spanish needed to replace. By 1600, amaranth had nearly disappeared from central Mexico. It survived only in the most remote mountain villages of Oaxaca and Puebla, places where Spanish authorities could not consistently reach. Small plots, hidden fields, seeds saved in the walls of houses, buried in clay pots, carried in the hem of clothing. Elders remembered, colonial law ensured the young never learned to grow it. 300 years of suppression did what the death penalty alone could not. It broke the chain of transmission between the people who knew and the people who came after them. The nutritional case for amaranth is not ancient tradition validated by modern science. It is modern science confirming what 3,000 years of human experience already established. Amaranth contains 13 to 14% protein by weight. But unlike wheat, its protein is complete. All 9 essential amino acids, including lysine, which wheat and corn both lack in sufficient quantities. Corn contains only 9% protein and is severely lysine deficient. The Aztec diet of amaranth combined with corn provided complete nutrition. Remove the amaranth and you get the protein deficiency diseases that ravaged post-conquest indigenous populations within a generation of the ban. A 2019 study published in Frontiers in Plant Science documented amaranth's drought resistance mechanism specifically, its ability to maintain photosynthetic efficiency at soil moisture levels that cause complete shutdown in wheat and corn, and quantified the water use efficiency advantage at 2.3 times greater than wheat under heat stress conditions. The FAO published a 2013 comprehensive review identifying amaranth as one of the 5 crops most urgently requiring mainstreaming for global food security, with documented yield performance across 23 countries. The International Center for Tropical Agriculture has documented that amaranth maintains yields in conditions where wheat production drops by 50%. 2 times the calcium of milk per gram. 3 times the fiber of wheat. Leaves containing more vitamin A and vitamin C than spinach. The data is open access. The institutional documentation is comprehensive. Here is what one properly managed amaranth growing season actually produces. Amaranth produces between 1,000 and 3,000 pounds of grain per acre. It grows in drought. It tolerates poor soil. Almost no insects eat it. Agronomists in the 1970s calculated it produces more protein per acre than soybeans, and more usable protein per acre than cattle grazing. A 10 by 10 foot garden plot planted with amaranth seed produces between 3 and 5 pounds of complete protein grain in a single 90-day growing season. All 9 essential amino acids, the lysine missing from wheat and corn-based diets, delivered in one seed. The plant is open-pollinated and breeds true. Save the largest seeds from the strongest plants and replant next season. The seed is never purchased again. Leaves are edible as greens from the first thinning through harvest. The entire plant feeds. Nothing is wasted. No input purchased after the first seed goes into the ground. Scale to 1 acre, and you are producing more usable protein than a cattle operation running on the same land in 90 days, with no purchased fertilizer, no pesticide, no annual seed contract. There's a $30 billion global protein supplement industry. It exists specifically because people eating wheat and corn-based diets are not getting complete protein and are purchasing lysine in pill form. Amaranth provided all of it in one seed. The Aztecs never needed supplements. They ate amaranth and corn together, and their diet was nutritionally complete. That knowledge was buried when Spain burned the fields. The supplement industry was built on the gap the burning left. Here is the question: the 200,000 acres of Aztec cultivation, the Florentine Codex documentation, the death penalty suppression, and the $30 billion supplement industry have been building toward. Why, with FAO documentation identifying amaranth as one of the 5 crops most urgently requiring mainstreaming for global food security, with frontiers in plant science confirming its water efficiency advantage over wheat, with open-access nutritional data showing it delivers complete protein that the 4 subsidized commodity crops cannot, does amaranth sit on a specialty shelf at $30 per pound, while wheat and corn receive 90% of global agricultural subsidies? The grain is not difficult to grow. Any farmer can save its seeds. Any garden plot can produce it in 90 days. It requires no pesticide, no purchased fertilizer, no annual seed contract. Amaranth cannot be patented. There is no hybrid amaranth requiring annual purchase. There is no GMO amaranth with a licensing agreement attached. In an industrial food system built entirely on intellectual property control and purchased input dependency, amaranth is structurally incompatible, not because it fails to grow, but because it cannot be owned. They could not burn every field. In the Sierra Norte de Oaxaca, the Mixtec communities maintained amaranth cultivation through 300 years of colonial suppression and 150 years of industrial agricultural displacement. The seeds were hidden in the walls of houses, buried in clay pots, carried in the hem of clothing from one generation to the next. The International Plant Genetic Resources Institute documented these communities in the 1980s and found heirloom Amaranthus cruentus varieties maintained nowhere else in the world. Varieties with specific drought resistance profiles and nutritional characteristics that had been selectively cultivated for over 2,000 years. They survived the colonial period only because individual families understood that the seed was worth more than their safety. Today, the Rodale Institute in Kutztown, Pennsylvania, maintains an open-access amaranth seed library, drawing on varieties recovered directly from the Oaxacan communities that never stopped growing it. Native Seed Search in Tucson, Arizona, maintains heritage amaranth varieties from the original Aztec cultivation region and ships globally without restriction. The seed the Spanish Empire spent 2 centuries trying to eliminate survived in the hands of people who understood that a seed that feeds your children is worth hiding from anyone who wants to take it from you. Here is what you can do with this information starting today. Amaranth seed is available through the Rodale Institute's Open Access Seed Library and through Native Seed Search in Tucson, Arizona. Both ship globally. Plant in full sun in any well-drained soil after your last frost date. Space plants 18 inches apart. Water moderately until established, then reduce. Harvest seed heads when they begin to dry on the plant at approximately 90 days. Thresh by hand into a clean container. Winnow in a light breeze. The seeds can be popped in a dry pan over high heat, 30 seconds, constant motion. Boiled as porridge, 1 part seed to 3 parts water, 20 minutes. Ground into flour and combined with wheat or corn flour for baking. The leaves are edible raw in salads or cooked as greens from first thinning through harvest. 1 seed, 1 plot, 90 days. Everything the $30 billion supplement industry sells you in a single harvest that anyone can grow. The same harvest a woman on a chinampa performed in 1480 before the decree made it a crime. Spain burned the fields to protect its religion. Industrial agriculture ignores the grain to protect its business model. The mechanism is different, the outcome is the same. This is before industry. Every grain that fed empires before a decree made it growing punishable by death has a file. Every seed that industrial agriculture cannot commodify has a file. Every one of them was buried not because it failed, but because it fed people too well for the systems that replaced it to afford to let it survive. In our next video, we would uncover the root that sustained entire civilizations across 3 continents before a single colonial policy removed it from the food supply in under a generation, where it still grows, and how to bring it back to your soil. Every file in this archive was buried for a reason. Every one of them still works. Subscribe to this channel now so none of them reach you too late.